Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well today. Cosmic Star Heroine is a game that kind of feels like it should be in the Phantasy Star series. It's like I'm playing a side story for that whole series of games, and it's something that I just really love. It's an extremely fun game. It is a very simple turn-based RPG, one that doesn't take as much time as you would think, but yeah, it's a lot of fun and it's got a great setting. The story starts, like many RPGs, with your main character working for some corrupt government agency that's fighting a terrorist organization. You meet a few more characters in this kind of introductory mission that you're on where you go up against somebody who's trying to, I don't know, just be a piece of shit. You get your next assignment, and it's to go retrieve an artifact from an old factory. It's pretty fun to see all these little pieces come together as the plot goes on. And again, it's a pretty quick game, so everything comes together very fast. After retrieving this artifact, your character has this weird dream, which seemingly implicates the person who's leading your whole government organization type thing. And from there, you betray the organization that you're working with and join up with the rebellion for a little bit. And much like the Phantasy Star series, you find out that there is some kind of an evil force behind everything. In this case, it's called Eternity, and you need to go and somehow defeat it. It does take you on sort of this little, not really intergalactic, but like space travel mission around this little solar system. So, much like Phantasy Star, you visit 3 different planets, gather a bunch of different allies, and then you go to an asteroid field and fight Eternity. You also get betrayed at some point, but that's pretty much standard for most RPGs, especially ones now today. It's pretty cool. I really was digging this story, and it was a lot of fun. I wish there was more of it, though, because it's a very quick game. When I looked up how long it took, it said around 8 hours. I think I finished it a little before that. But yeah, the story goes by very fast, and it's a very good story. Cosmic Star Heroine is a turn-based RPG. It also reminds me a little bit of Chrono Trigger as well, just because you can see the enemies on the screen, so you can potentially avoid combat, but I wouldn't, because you have that incentive of gaining experience and getting better abilities and that sort of thing. I don't really like the combat system that they have here. It is pretty interesting, and it's kind of a cool way that they did this, but yeah, I think I just prefer like a more traditional one where you have like a standard attack and then like a little technique section with your tech points or magic points or whatever you want to call them. And here it's weird. You have a series of 8 attacks, and you get to use them one time, and then you have to recharge. So that's kind of interesting. You also gain more attacks as the game goes on, so you can kind of customize it to your own taste. But yeah, there's just something weird about it. Each character also has like an elemental unit attached to them, so your main character might do more water damage, you'll have another character that'll do electric damage, someone that'll do fire damage, so on and so forth. So you do need to sort of organize your party around that. I never really found that to be as straightforward as it could be. I guess that's not really the right way to say it, but I just didn't find that whole system to be as much fun as it probably could be, or as much fun as other RPGs make it. You have to create a party of 4 characters, eventually, once you get enough people to actually make up a party of 4. And that is where I think they did a much better job than other RPGs, because you can easily swap your characters in and out. So when you're on just the regular maps, you can just go to the menu and select party and swap the characters quite easily. You also get some side characters that you can recruit throughout the game, and they'll have some kind of an effect on your party. This wasn't something that I explored a whole lot in this playthrough, because this is kind of an easy RPG, and I didn't really think that I needed to really mess around with that. I thought a lot of the battles were fairly easy. Even when you get later in the game and your enemies have like 10,000 hit points, you're at a point where you do a lot of damage with your attacks, and if you pay attention in the first couple of battles, you'll know what the enemy's weaknesses are, and you can swap characters around to have the most effect on the enemies. So overall, I like the gameplay for the most part. Like, I like the going around and solving puzzles, which are fairly easy for the most part, but there are a few things that make you think a little bit. And the combat system is really one that I'm kind of struggling with, like how to really say that I don't like it that much. It is unique, but I found it to be a little bit more annoying than it really needed to be. So basically, I really like everything about the game, with the exception of just how they did the combat in this. It's still fun to go through all of these things and sort of work out how you want your characters to be set up, but I just prefer a more traditional style of actually, doing the combat, where you're just selecting fight or defend or magic or items or that sort of thing. Oh, yeah. I completely forgot. You can program different attacks in this, which wasn't something that I really messed around with, because I really didn't think I needed to. And there is like an item system in this, but I never really went into that because it felt like I didn't need to. You can heal your characters up quite a bit during this. There are a lot of different characters that feel a little overpowered, in my opinion, or at least their abilities do. And I never really needed to, use a Phoenix Down or use any of these other items that were in here. So great that they were there, but yeah, I didn't really need them. The game also throws just a ridiculous amount of money at you, so I never had to go and grind for cash or grind for experience points. That's a plus for a game like this. So overall, I like the gameplay, but the combat system took some time to get used to, and it's not really one that I would prefer. This is a gorgeous looking game. The character sprites look fantastic, the towns look great, the cutscenes are wonderful. I loved everything about how this game looked. Cosmic Star Heroine has a retro style to it, and it's just really cool to see. The pixel art is great, the cutscenes use in-game graphics, and they use their own cutscenes and everything. This looks exactly how I would have thought a Phantasy Star game would look if they went with more animated cutscenes instead of having comic book style cutscenes. It just looks great. The 3 planets in this that you visit, that's one of the parts where I think they didn't do as good a job of kind of making them feel different as they could. The first planet feels exactly like just a technologically advanced place. The second planet, where you have to go underground, didn't feel all that different. It just felt like a generic jungle planet that you're going to. And the third planet felt kind of the same. It would have been nicer if they had something like in the Phantasy Star series where you have kind of like the Utopia planet, the desert world, and then the ice world. If they had done something like that, I would have loved this game even more than I currently do. You also don't see a whole lot of these three planets, and that was a little bit disappointing at first. Two of them, like I mentioned, they look very similar to each other, but it isn't that bad. I've mentioned Phantasy Star a lot, and that's because Cosmic Star Heroine really reminds me of that series, and it has everything in it that I would want from like a Phantasy Star 5 or something like that. And just the whole visual style and everything reminds me of those games, particularly the fourth one, with just how the sprites look, how the cutscenes are done. The enemy design is really cool, and it also uses that whole cybernetic enemies, especially at the end when you're mostly fighting robots. That really reminds me of a Phantasy Star game. Having, oh gosh, how do I want to put this? Just having all of this stuff put together looks amazing. I cannot say enough about this, but I don't want to keep rambling on about how much I love the look of this thing. So overall, I love the graphics. I think the game is beautiful. The cutscenes are awesome. And it really makes me wish that this had been a Phantasy Star game because, man, do I really love the way it looks. So let's talk about the ending. There are really two things that I want to talk about here, but I'll start off with just how this last battle kind of makes me feel. It reminds me an awful lot of the ending of Chrono Trigger, where if you go through the Black Omen, you end up fighting the Queen at the end of that, and then you go on and you fight just version after version of Lavos. That's sort of how this ending battle is presented, where you defeat one big bad guy and you think, okay, well, that's the end. Then you go on and you have to fight the next big bad guy, who then has multiple forms. The difference is this ending fight is, at least in my opinion, much easier than the Chrono Trigger fight, because you really only have one target that you have to worry about, and you don't need to kind of guess on what target you're dealing with, and the weaknesses don't really change a whole lot. I'm specifically talking about the first time you play through Chrono Trigger and you don't know where the weak point is to fight Lavos at his very, very final form. The game's ending also reminds me an awful lot of just the Phantasy Star series. I know I've mentioned that an awful lot in here, but this is the part that really, really felt like it was encompassing the entire Phantasy Star series in it. Because you're fighting the same entity over and over again, and that entity starts telling you about how many times it has fought this same battle, or how many times it's, had to deal with something like this. When you defeat, I think, the second form in this, Eternity mentions nobody has made it this far, and that now it needs to, take you seriously. Which seems a little odd, because Eternity wants to wipe out all of humanity, or all life in the universe, but there's always life in the universe. So, much like this whole machine that you're dealing with, it's also trapped in this cycle where it'll wipe the universe clean, but life is always going to exist in the universe. So it just keeps doing the same thing over and over again. At least that's the way it felt when I was playing it, where your characters are just a part of Eternity's never-ending cycle of fighting the enemy, dying, and then getting reborn or reconstructed in some way. It really makes me wish there were more games in this series, so you can see other people battling eternity. Kind of like with Phantasy Star, where they're always fighting Dark Force / Dark Falls or whatever the enemy is at the very end of Phantasy Star 4. I just can't remember the name of it. In Phantasy Star, you fight Dark Force and Dark Falls, and then you find out that they're just kind of agents for this greater enemy at the very end. And then you fight that and you win, because apparently the god that created this whole solar system just fucked off and didn't want to deal with whatever was going on here. Overall, I really like the ending. After you've gotten done defeating Eternity and it gives its standard bad guy speech that's basically telling you that it's going to be back at some point. None of your characters will be around for it, but it'll eventually be back. You then just get the wrap-up of what everybody's doing and where everybody went. So all the different members of your party, they go on to have their own lives and everything. You also find out that your main character is still alive, just off doing her own thing. She's not really affiliated with the government anymore. She's not dealing with any of the people that she really talked to or any of the people that she's been through this whole thing with. She's just off on her little spaceship flying around. And occasionally she seems to get missions from, Sue, the guy who helped you at the very beginning and used to be a government agent as well. So you've restored peace and balance to this little solar system and potentially saved everyone in the world. And yeah, that's kind of a nice little wrap-up and a nice little ending for all of it. At some point in the future, they're going to have to deal with Eternity again, but we don't know when that's going to be, and there aren't any more games, so yeah, I guess that's just something people will have to deal with at some other point. It is a fun ending, but it made me wish that there was more to the game than what there is. I really wish that there was more to this game. It went by really fast for me. I was near the end of the game after like 7 hours, and granted I didn't do all of the side content or the other missions and everything, but it still went by really fast for an RPG. It was a lot of fun, and the game looks amazing, but I wish there was more to this. It took me around like 8 hours to beat this without going through the side missions. If I had done those, I think you can probably tack on like another 2 hours, so right around 10 or so sounds about right. It's really just a quick, linear experience to go through this. A friend told me about this game a while ago, and it took me a while to get around to playing it, but I'm really glad that I did because it was a really great game. It's just a spectacular looking RPG. It reminded me of some other games that I've played before and kind of want to play again now after going through this, but Cosmic Star Heroine is an awesome game. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.